Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where there is a lot going on. And for once, it doesn't seem like Hollywood is circling the drain. What a nice change of pace. In fact, in a business that's used to focusing on home runs, it's starting to see the benefit of triples, doubles, and even singles. Is it baseball season right now? I know everybody's focused on basketball, but I kind of think baseball is happening right now. But you get the metaphor. And this is largely thanks to streaming, which continues to aggressively reshape the entertainment business. The new focus is on subscriptions, not just for streaming services, but even for movie theaters themselves. We just recently figured out, we're not even 100% sure on this still, but it would make sense, that it seems, I know this is definitely true for smaller theaters, but at least in the first few weeks, theaters have to pay the studios for the movies up front and then recoup that payment any way that they can. From ticket sales to concession stands to subscription services to also, that's probably why they're pushing themed popcorn buckets so much. Although walk-up business still must be huge, we see a lot of that at the last minute, and I bet when you walk up, are you buying at face value or do you have a subscription service? I certainly know subscribers drop a lot of tickets at the last minute. If you can't get a movie theater seat, check maybe an hour to even, I'm sorry to say, a couple of minutes before the movie starts. And I suspect some choice seats will open up, particularly at AMC. That's happened to me. I got some great Wicked seats for my third viewing that way. I think AMC should lift when you have to cancel by, because I'm talking like minutes before the movie started. But I do think that walk-up business does very well, particularly, I would say, in the middle of the country where movie tickets are still under $20. What a way to live. You're so lucky. They're very expensive here on the coasts and particularly big cities. What's a movie ticket for you these days? And then also I think families probably do a lot of walk-up business. Although AMC just lowered the age for AMC A-List to 13 to try to entice more families to sign up. AMC just made a lot of changes to A-List. You can also do up to 4 reservations at a time now. Has anyone signed up? Has anyone, I don't know why you're not. If you have an AMC anywhere near you, I don't know why you're not an AMC list member. It's an incredible subscription service. All right, so Disney had another good week and has already hit $1 billion for the year domestic, cobbling together some flops and underperformers. But they not only did it, they're the first of the year to do so studio-wise. Apparently, with the exception of 2020, which was the pandemic, Disney has passed $1 billion domestic for the past 20 years, the only studio to be able to do so. They just, no matter what, Disney just keeps their head down and they just keep going. And we're going to take an even deeper look than usual at the streaming numbers because Nielsen has released some new charts. And they have that new chart smell. Smells like tea. We got some very interesting information here that I can't wait to go over with you. And you know what? You can have this kind of fun every Sunday without even having to check to see when Movie Math is up because YouTube will let you know if you hit subscribe and also notifications. And as long as you're clicking stuff down there, why not click on like as well? Now get this! Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning continued to dance their dance as they fell the exact same amount in their second weekend, just 57%. That's particularly good for Lilo and Stitch because it opened so big. You would expect a drop somewhere in the 60th percentile, and that would still be considered very good. But again, they both fell just 57%, meaning to a degree, Hollywood was able to keep that Memorial Day weekend party going. It's not the best weekend ever after a Memorial Day, but it's still very, very good. Of course, they're coming off the best Memorial Day weekend of all time. All right, so Tom Cruise has got to be enjoying this breathing room because he certainly didn't get it with his last Mission Impossible outing, which of course now infamously was crushed by Barbenheimer. Who opens, I guess it could be counter-programming to Barbie, but who opens a Mission Impossible a week before the new Christopher Nolan film? So yes, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which turned out to be a very appropriate title, fell 65% in its second weekend. But Final Reckoning is only $4 million ahead of Dead Reckoning for the domestic totals in their second weekends, despite a stronger opening. So I guess the weekday viewership wasn't as strong. Ironically, though, Tom Cruise is going up against his new rumored lady friend this coming weekend. I don't know what's going on with Ana de Armas and Tom Cruise. Is it business? Is it personal? Is it both? But, there's certainly someone's trying to make something happen there. Or maybe something actually is happening there. But Ballerina from the John Wick series is coming out this weekend, and that's certainly going to, eat into Mission Impossible business more than Lilo and Stitch's. Lilo and Stitch had to fend off Karate Kid this weekend, and did it. We will discuss that. But Ballerina is interesting because it already has a little bit of controversy. Lionsgate has decided to enact 2, or at least suggest 2 social media embargoes. Usually there's a social media embargo, and then later on there's a review embargo. If you feel good about your project, you put the social media embargo early, and then, the review embargo follows a couple of days later, maybe even sometimes a week later. If you don't feel good, sometimes they'll lift at the exact same time, rendering the social media embargo moot because everyone's just going to jump right to the reviews. Now, this is what the Ballerina has supposedly done, according to a couple of junket press who've already seen the film. So Lionsgate apparently said that if you want to say something nice about the movie, you could have tweeted about it back, I think, on May 22nd. But if you didn't care for the Ballerina, they would prefer for you to hold off that social media reaction until the review embargo lifts this Wednesday. That's a very interesting change. Social media, first it was Rotten Tomatoes, now it's Rotten Tomatoes and social media. It's really doing a number on movies. Netflix, of course, doesn't release any of their embargoes until the shows and movies actually drop. So we'll see how the traditional studios move forward. How do you feel about this? I think they're gonna try and make it harder and harder for you to get an honest opinion about a movie until maybe you're already seeing it. So we'll see what happens there, and we'll see if this kind of protection of the Ballerina is even warranted. So Mission Impossible, by the way, most media screenings are this Tuesday, the day before the embargo lifts, and that's when I'm going to be seeing the film. So Mission Impossible, it has a long, long, long way to go before it has a respectable worldwide haul. As we discussed last Sunday, with a $400 million budget, it'll never be profitable in theaters. But luckily for Tom Cruise, Paramount is distracted right now as Sherry Redstone tries to push that Skydance acquisition past Trump. But tension is heating up with accusations from the media and government officials at the local California and federal level that she's crossing the line and trying to, garner favor with Trump. So again, he approves this deal. Keep an eye on this space. We're seeing Hollywood pivot to try to be more friendly with Trump as Trump threatens to do real damage to the industry. Bob Iger met with Trump to show him the new theme park plans for Abu Dhabi. Democrats, down the line, but politicians are appalled and, as a traditional party of Hollywood, feel betrayed and I'm sure a little nervous. But let's see if Democrats can actually do something about it. Could they stop the deal from happening? Because that's all Sherry Redstone cares about, getting that deal approved. It's weird, though. I think no matter what ends up being the box office total for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, it has made everyone just feel good about the franchise, Tom Cruise, and who else do you think has gotten a boost from this film? I'm seeing a lot of love for the sexy submarine crew, including Tramell Tillman and Katie O'Brien. I hope it helps both of their careers. I'm a big fan of both. So I've seen a lot of calls on social media for maybe a submarine spin-off. Some are saying a movie, but they're always looking for streaming shows to spin off of these franchises. How about a submarine spin-off Paramount Plus show? I would actually watch that. Would you? Now, the real money that's happening right now is with Lilo and Stitch, which has more than double Mission Impossible Final Reckoning's worldwide box office, but with just a quarter of the budget. Oh, that is a very nice performing film. Lilo and Stitch is even at this point globally pacing ahead of Minecraft, and that's almost at $1 billion itself. So yes, odds are still quite strong. I mean, it's almost a given that Lilo and Stitch will be $1 billion film. We'll see how long it takes it to get there. It's again, remember 19 days. If it can get there before How to Train Your Dragon hits theaters, and I think that is also very doable. But as Lilo and Stitch soars, Fantastic Four just got hit with a lot of negativity. largely thanks to that test screening they just had, which in hindsight seems to have been a spectacularly poor idea. But I don't think Disney really cares. I think Marvel is essentially going into hibernation before Fantastic Four even opens, canceling Hall H for this year at Comic-Con. They are going to focus a lot on Fantastic Four, and they might have a Fantastic Four panel in Hall H, just like Deadpool and Wolverine did on that Friday I think was it Thursday or Friday, but on the day of release. Well, that was a Ryan Reynolds idea, and I think it was extremely clever. We'll see if they repeat that. But I just think that at this point, Marvel is already, going in, as I said, into hibernation as they prepare or focus on righting the ship with Doomsday. Fantastic Four, it can end up, in the same range as Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts. I think that would be okay as long as Doomsday makes $1 billion. Doomsday must be $1 billion picture. I mean, think about how much they paid alone to Robert Downey Jr. and the Russos. And when it comes to billion-dollar pictures, Disney pretty much is guaranteed 3 for this year outside of the usual IP that gets them there. We're talking Lilo and Stitch, Zootopia 2, and Avatar 3. It's good to see Disney so healthy and not so reliant on Iger's purchases, although, of course, that last one is one of his purchases. But yes, it usually sometimes has seemed like Disney has been taken over by Marvel and Star Wars. So it's nice to see that the core branding still performs. Back to Marvel, though. The Daredevil headlines have also been awful. And like Star Wars, it seems it's time for Marvel to take a break. Although be careful, Star Wars had a tough time coming out of that break, at least in the movie space. In fact, they're still trying to get out of it. But Andor is actually doing quite well. We're going to talk about that in the streaming space. And The Mandalorian and Grogu, I think, has good buzz. We'll see what happens with Pedro Pascal, who Disney is heavily invested in at this point. And as his star rises, it's been interesting to see someone who has been classically introverted become a lot more comfortable with himself. Now, there is a train of thought in Hollywood that's been going on for quite some time, since the beginning of Hollywood, that maybe it's best to remain an enigma to attract the biggest audience possible. There's a saying that the less you say, the more everyone assumes that you think and agree with them. So, I think if you're a niche talent, you want to really get a strong fan base that's very defined. But if you're someone who's in 4-quadrant films, you want to cast as wide a net as possible. I would also counter, though, that a large part of Pedro Pascal's audience adores him even more now, and he is really, really popular on social media. Like that sketch that he did on Saturday Night Live has only become more true. But I think the real question is what's going to happen with conservative audiences, which can make a considerable difference with blockbuster films when you need to cast that wide net. Also, though, there's the question as to whether or not he's overexposed as an actor for everybody. So we'll find out. He has Eddington, The Materialists, and Fantastic Four all coming out in the next couple of weeks. But then he'll have a big break before The Mandalorian and Grogu hits theaters next year. But then also he'll have Doomsday for Christmas. But it's a good sign that everyone is so devastated and upset that he's no longer on The Last of Us. So Disney's like, we got him, don't worry. You want more Pedro Pascal? Here he is. What are your thoughts on Pedro Pascal these days? And what advice would you give him as his career enters new territory? Just how lucky is Disney? Well, even the opening of Epic Universe has turned out not to be that big of a threat. You have to wonder, is it luck? Is it, social media shenanigans? Is it a mix of the two? It's very interesting how this is developing because there are reports when it comes to Epic Universe of an almost empty theme park for opening week. Now, of course, the explanation is that Epic Universe has limited attendance as the park opens to kind of ease their way into it. They don't want stories of rides breaking down, etc. But I think the problem is that in the past, Universal and other theme park openings have been substantially crowded. And it seems that early access, once again, maybe was an issue. We've seen that with movies when they have too many early fan screenings. Well, Epic Universe did months of early attendance with even the general public being able to buy tickets. And so it seems a lot of the locals have gone and perhaps the park opened right before the vacation season truly got underway. Surely traffic will pick up at Epic Universe, but first impressions stick. What are your thoughts on Epic Universe's debut and how it came across in the press? I really do think that Disney is like, woo, probably like tweeting out themselves a little bit. All right, so Disney was also able to hold off Sony's new Karate Kid, although it was Cobra Kai fans themselves who hurt this film the most, with an agenda against their own franchise because they were upset that Cobra Kai was not more heavily involved in the storyline. Cobra Kai fans, you clearly are powerful. Where do you want to see the Karate Kid franchise go next? I know some of you might be like, Cobra Kai, but I mean, the show was canceled for a reason, and some of the talent has gone on to do other projects which didn't do particularly well. So I think it's hard to know where to go next with the franchise. I'm curious to hear what you would say, but I have to say Cobra Kai fans were very, very mean to this film, not even giving it a chance. Fascinatingly, while it was women over 25 who liked the movie the most, I liked it. And if you check Rotten Tomatoes, you'll see that female critics, interestingly, were the kindest overall to the film. But women under 25 are the smallest group to show up. I suspect because of a lack of female characters, Karate Kid Legends only has a mom and a girlfriend character and no female fighters. Also, Lilo and Stitch is performing extremely well with female audiences, and I think pulled a lot of people away as well with first and maybe second and third viewings. And also maybe people felt they just went to the movies and so they could skip this week as they wait maybe for How to Train Your Dragon. We'll see. Unless they signed up for AMC A-List and are 13 and older. And while the diversity demos for this film were very good, just not a lot of people showed up. But the audience scores are excellent. I'm telling you, it's a good movie, which I think means that Karate Kid Legends might do really well down the line on digital, and then especially because Sony has no streaming service, it's going to go to Netflix, where Cobra Kai, of course, lives, and it might do extremely well there. As I just said, it's a good movie. So when do you think you'll watch Karate Kid Legends? Do maybe you feel a little guilty for being mean to it if you're a Cobra Kai fan? What do you think of these strong audience scores? Do you think you might still try to catch it in theaters? Are you going to wait for digital? Or perhaps Netflix? Or maybe you're still planning not to see it at all? As for the rest of the top 10, Warner Brothers is still doing very well right now. All three of their films, their current releases, are far beyond their break-even points. Wow, they're making money. They're making bank. Everyone, of course, is gushing about Sinners and Minecraft's performances, but Final Destination is extremely impressive. Warner Brothers really revived the heck out of that franchise. A24, speaking of horror, was able to launch its own new horror film with a solid debut. Those are particularly good audience scores, the cinema score especially for a horror film. And that means while it's doing pretty good in theaters, it should do very well on digital and streaming. A24, of course, has that deal with Max. Though A24's Friendship finally lost its momentum with not just its first drop, but a pretty big one, despite still expanding in theaters. The Phoenician Scheme, though, did extremely well in limited release, with just 6 theaters in New York City and Los Angeles, and delivering an outstanding per-theater average. Wes Anderson and his cast, that's Kate Winslet's daughter! I didn't know it, but once you find out, you can really see it. That's amazing. But they've been going around doing multiple Q&As at the theater for the general public, helping to really create an event atmosphere for opening weekend. As we've been saying these days, it's all about making it feel like an event to get people to go to the multiplex, even for this type of film. The movie needs to do something to combat that weak critic score, and Anderson hasn't had a genuine crowd pleaser since the Grand Budapest Hotel. What a movie. Over a decade ago. That was 11 years ago. We'll see if Anderson and Universal's Focus Features can will this one into a box office hit, so far so good, and also make it a major awards contender, which remains to be seen at this point. Switching over to streaming, starting with Nielsen's charts per usual, we're going to start with the regular charts first and then get into those new ones. But first, we're going to take a look at the end of April, early May, and here we see the full week of the 3rd episode of The Last of Us. And there's been a drop from episode 2. It was 937 million minutes last week. This week it's 827, so about 100 million minutes. But that's not a huge drop. As many of you have said, I think we'll really see what happens with episode 4. Because, no matter how you react, if you reacted negatively to episode 2, you might still try episode 3. So we'll see what happens. We're going to follow Last of Us week to week. So this is a drop, but it's not like a jaw-dropping one. But look at Andor. That's pretty amazing. That's a jaw-dropper in a good way. We're talking about creating events, and I think the 3-episode drop, a movie a week for 4 weeks, is undeniably turning out to be a great idea. You can't argue with these results. But it is odd that Andor didn't generate a lot of discussion online, particularly with I would say the main or the fundamental Star Wars. Well, I don't know. A lot of people are arguing who is a fundamental Star Wars fan these days. But I think it excited cinephiles, which is interesting, and some Star Wars fans. But I don't think it excited like the main Star Wars fandom. I think it did, to be fair, it did manage to trend on Twitter when it aired on Tuesday nights. And is it doing well on TikTok? But, I think a big question is, was it worth the $650 million that Disney okayed for both seasons? I would say if it's able to undo the damage done by The Acolyte, even if it just begins to undo that damage, I kind of think it was worth that money. I think that they did truly end up creating something special and interesting. And, who knows what the Andor effect might be down the line for bringing more intellectual storytelling to the genre space. The first season did not work out from a business perspective, but the second season is. So that's interesting. Right now, though, Disney and Star Wars are laser focused on getting Emmy noms for the show, and those are going to be announced July 15th. But surely they're also trying to figure out a way to keep Tony Gilroy at Star Wars, or at least at Disney. If only they could pair him with a really great producer that he would listen to, who could make his work a touch more commercial and justify these huge budgets. If you watch The Offer, please watch The Offer. I shall bring it up forever. But you will see how important to The Godfather producer Al Ruddy and studio executive Robert Evans both were. Business people can help with the creative because they allow you to have more creative. All right, so Netflix is still on top, though, quantity and quality, as well as because they do binge drops over weekly. The 3-episode drop at a time is kind of like a way to do a semi-binge. Even Netflix's non-English language show, The Eternaut from Argentina, which some of you I know are a big fan of, so I'm sure you're very excited to see that, managed to hit the originals chart. But as I said, what's really interesting is that Nielsen released top 10s for the 2024-2025 television seasons. They don't do a year like movies do. And even though they're streaming these days, television and the Emmys, which I guess dictate this, still go by the old school network TV seasons, fall to spring. So that's what these top 10s encompass. On the overall chart for viewer totals, you can see that Netflix is just really dominating, and that for all the negative talk about Squid Game Season 2, it's still a cultural phenomenon, same for adolescents. But I think the real surprise here is that network TV is still extremely competitive. Look at all those network shows in the top 10. Reacher continues to be a juggernaut, but oddly does not help Alan Ritchson's career, although he was so bad in Fast X. I'd be reluctant and nervous to hire him. And Landman and Monsters were truly huge hits. I loved both those shows, so that makes me very happy to see. Also, while Paradise drove much more conversation online, similar storyline Zero Day was the one that got a lot more actual viewership. But the 18 to 49 top 10 is even more interesting. Now, why does 18 to 49 get its own chart? Some of you probably know the answer to that question and are already typing that down below. But the answer is that 18 to 49 is the most valuable demographic to advertisers. And even streaming services these days have ads. They've become such a force at the upfronts that we just had, which are the presentations to advertisers. So in many ways, this 18 to 49 chart is the more valuable of the two. Squid Game and Adolescence still on top, but then Monsters and Nobody Wants This jump to being right behind them. While some other shows are in the top 10 here, but aren't on the other chart. White Lotus, it's number 5 over here, and Running Point also does very well. But look at Agatha all along. Wow, just making the list, and the only Disney Plus show on either of the two top 10s, on overall viewers and 18 to 49. Agatha outperformed Penguin and Daredevil, which actually performed particularly poorly. Penguin did pretty good. It's somewhat outside of the top 10, but Daredevil is at the bottom of both charts. Why does Marvel keep undervaluing the Wandaverse? I mean, it's really frustrating and annoying. Jack Schaefer should be building the Wandaverse out right now as we speak. We'll see if Vision Quest can tap into the same audience, but so far it's looking like they're going in a little bit of a different direction. See how it works out for them. People sure like that Picard show, though, and it has the final seasons, and it has the same showrunner. I like robot and droid stories. But even shows like Severance and The Pitt are surprisingly low down on these charts. And that's what makes this list so interesting. But remember, Severance and The Pitt are both big awards hopefuls and surely drive a lot of subscriptions to both their respective services. So they have value in other ways. Streaming, again, changes the metrics. If you'd like to take a look at both these charts in full, they're both, we're going over largely the top 10, but they both go to 100. I've put the link down below. On Netflix's charts for just last week, Sirens from producer Margot Robbie, as I said before, she's getting her Ryan Murphy on. This is a pretty solid debut, but it's certainly helpful to rising stars Megan Fahey. I don't know if Megan Fahey has a good name for a star. I don't know. Back in the day, Hollywood would give you a new name if you were going to be a star. What do you think? And Millie Alcock. That's very nice for Millie Alcock because she, of course, has Supergirl coming up. So she does, it gives her a little more depth as an actress. She's not just the House of the Dragon actress. Although that's a very nice feather in someone's cap. And they both, of course, get an assist from Julianne Moore here, who lends the star some star power and cachet. But with guys, Glenn Howerton is on this show as well. I still am confounded as to why Blackberry didn't do more for his career. And Josh, I was looking up who's in this. Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I wanted to make sure I get Megan Fahey's name right. So I was looking up to make sure I spelled it right. And I was like, Josh Segarra. I haven't watched this show yet, but with Glenn Howerton and Josh Segarra, maybe I should check it out. Did any of you watch Sirens? How is it? Is it too trashy or is it delightfully trashy? And this Miss Rachel show, which we've also been ignoring, that's a Netflix YouTube show, a hybrid. And, you might have caught it on the Nielsen the Nielsen 100 charts, and it was even in one of the top 10s that we were just going over. So that's amazing. Nothing too exciting happening on Netflix's movies chart. Nothing really exciting on either chart, but Fear Street continues to be a solid franchise for them. Nona's is also still going, still chugging along there. I do wonder if Vince Vaughn perhaps will get an overall deal with Netflix. If I were his management team, I would be floating that out to Netflix right now. He's not doing a lot of other stuff. He just had an Apple TV show recently. I'd be like, hey, how'd you like to make? Lindsay Lohan's just about to jump ship, right? Wanted to make some more Vince Vaughn movies. Then on digital with Apple's charts, a price drop for Working Man got it up there between Minecraft and Warfare, which are both still going very strong. Again, I love those movies, so I'm very happy to see that. While animated religious film The King of Kings, already a hit in theaters for Easter, well, not a huge hit, but, very well, particularly for Angel Studios. But it continues to be an impressive performer for Angel Studios now on digital. Mission Impossible, again, everybody's feeling great about the brand, and the movies are doing very well here on digital. That's a very good sale price for the collection, and those are pre-orders for the current film at number 8. That's amazing. And then audiences are also getting ready for The Ballerina. Hopefully, that John Wick collection is just $15, so that might be driving the sales all along, by itself. And then also 28 years later, audiences seem to be getting ready for that movie by watching the first film, even though the new film is still a few weeks away. But yes, up first is Lionsgate's Ballerina, coming out this weekend as the studio tries yet again to turn John Wick into a cinematic universe. The TV show didn't turn out so well, so we'll see what they can accomplish here. They're also, of course, going to be doing that. Did that Vegas experience open yet? They're really trying with John Wick. We'll see if they can do it. Lionsgate is like they had such a horrible 2024. It could only get better for them. Meanwhile, the Phoenician scheme goes wide while The Life of Chuck becomes the new hot limited release, or at least hopefully it does. And IFC has their own horror film coming out. They're going to float it out with Jai Courtney and sharks. People do love sharks. Then on digital, Tuesday, Sinners. This is it. We've had a couple of close calls. Warner Brothers saw how well the movie was doing. They kept pushing the digital release. It's Tuesday. Have you still not seen Sinners? Are you going to watch it on Tuesday? And maybe you have seen Sinners and you want to own it and buy it again. Oh, I bet that thing's packed with amazing extras. Oh, I bet that drives a lot of sales. That's exciting. Of course, Ryan Coogler has now moved on to also trying to get awards stage for that film. And I think Sinners will be I hope it'll be a strong awards contender. Then on Friday, a film that nobody has any respect for, Hurry Up Tomorrow, will also hit digital. With streaming movies on Friday, Netflix has a new Tyler Perry movie, That Man is a Machine, and Hulu has that animated Predator film. Finally, with shows, Stick starts on Apple TV, I believe it's on Wednesday. This is another show with half-hour episodes, and I recommend it as a binge. It's an incredible binge. I I got my screeners, and they gave me everything but the last episode, which was so mean, because I actually really enjoyed the show. It's particularly as a binge. You might want to wait for it to be a binge. I watched my screeners like in a day and a half. I just couldn't stop going to the next episode. But I don't have the last episode. Like Murderbot, it's also a very progressive show. Owen Wilson is at the top of his game. He's excellent on this show, and I always love me some Mark Maron. Also, Timothy Olyphant shows up towards the end. Woo! And I think that Peter Seeger and Lily Kay are very strong newcomers. Very, very good cast on that show. I'll be curious to see if it can be a hit. Nobody's talking about Murderbot. Murderbot didn't really stick. Well, are you watching Murderbot? Maybe you're waiting to binge it. Then on Thursday, Ginny and Georgia is back on Netflix, as is Tyres, while Phineas and Ferb drops 10 brand new episodes on Disney Plus it's Friday, I think, on Friday. But I don't know if any of this is going to be able to compete with the NBA Finals, which I looked up and are happening. Poor Knicks. They didn't make the finals. So the NBA Finals, who's going to win it all, those games start on Thursday night and could very much end up soaking up all the conversation. We'll see what happens. All right, and that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what June movies and shows? Everyone's been focused on July, but what June movies and shows are you looking forward to? Share your thoughts down below. Again, subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.